Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode 234 of Real Blend, a podcast that recognizes that the hierarchy of power in the DC executive offices has changed big time.
Okay, what was your joke gonna be 45 minutes ago?
Yeah,
because that news just dropped.
It just dropped. It was gonna be like it wasn't good. I was gonna a podcast that's equal parts Sean O'Connell and Ron Howard this week because he did the
thank
interview.
God for James Gunn.
Yeah,
do a
it's kinda-
podcast that's 3 episodes away from Room 237.
Yes, on this week's show, the news just dropped as we're recording this. We will briefly discuss James Gunn and Peter Safran getting assigned the head DC film, TV, and animation, which is big news. We're going to react to the new Ant-Man trailer, and Ron freaking Howard joins the show. Another white whale.
He legally changed his middle name to Freakin', by the way.
Oh, his people called me. His people called me. They said, please.
Didn't Ron Howard make a white whale movie?
A white whale movie?
Heart of the Ocean?
Is that
The
right?
one with Chris Hemsworth? Yeah, Daenerys, right?
yeah.
Daenerys knows.
Wasn't Tom Holland in that too?
Was he? I don't think he was in the whale movie.
I'm
Thor
almost
was in
certain
it.
that Tom Holland was in a Ron Howard boat movie.
That's a good. If you couldn't tell,
Be more specific.
If you couldn't tell, I am filling in for Sean O'Connell. He's doing something that I would get in trouble even if I hinted at. And that's
In the heart of the sea.
Get.
We know what it is.
They know what it is. Sean is very busy doing something very cool, which you will hear about many, many months from now. But joining me is Jake Hamilton, Fox 32 Chicago's Jake Hamilton. How are you doing, buddy?
My friends, I have to give you guys an update because I just told the boys just moments before we started filming that my mom was watching Barbarian for the first time because, everyone in my family is a big horror movie fan.
Yeah.
Here's the progression of her texts. I'm watching it. These people are so stupid. I'm screaming at the TV. And then the final text is, that movie was, in all capital letters, amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
So Mama Hamilton is a Barbarian fan.
I am a Jan Hamilton fan, and I wish you would have done it in the accent, though. That's the only thing I was missing from that.
I normally do. I don't know why I didn't this time. I don't know why I hedged.
That, of course, is the voice of the one and only Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Oh, I thought I was going to mess up your guys'. I thought I was going to mix your channel numbers. Yeah.
I'm not good enough to be Kevin.
No. Well, good to see you guys. Love you guys. And the Holland movie I was referring to is In the Heart of the Sea with Chris Hemsworth and Tom Holland, directed by Ron Howard.
Holland's in it?
Yeah. I remember
I do not remember him in on that.
I remember interviewing him at the junket because it was Chris Hemsworth, Benjamin Walker, Cillian Murphy, Tom Holland, Ben Whishaw, and Brendan Gleeson, directed by Ron Howard.
Wow.
That's a great cast.
That's a great cast. Oh my God.
I love
I
that.
remember liking it for some reason.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a really cool interview because, and we'll get into you're going to hear it, but
Well, let me before you set up to it, let me get through the rigmarole, the housekeeping. Of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. You can find us at youtube.com/RealBlendPodcast. We're of course available wherever you get your podcasts. And we also have our premium feed, which gets you ad-free versions of the audio feed. It gets you an extra show on Mondays. It gets you a newsletter from Sean every other week. You can find more info on that in the description. But this week, we're doing another giveaway. This giveaway is going to be over on Real Blend's Twitter. It's all going to take place on Real Blend's Twitter. If you're listening to this now and you didn't see us tweet this out earlier in the week, you can head there. I am not going to pull winners until Friday afternoon. But we have 5 codes for Barbarian, of all things.
Nice.
5 digital codes for Barbarian to give away.
We did not give one to my mom.
I was about to say, do we only have 4 left?
No, we did not. Head over to Real Blend's Twitter. It'll be the pinned tweet on our profile that'll explain what you need to do in order to get a shot at one of those giveaway or one of those codes. And then the afternoon on Friday, if you're listening this early enough, or if you saw us tweet that, I will pick 5 people at random, and you can enjoy an awesome movie. This interview, Kevin.
We're so nice.
Ron Howard, what were you going to say there, Kev?
Oh, well, also, I got to mention we had Zach Kreger on, who was amazing for Barbarian.
Yes.
And go back and listen to that interview, just because if you want some Easter eggs and nuggets about how he made those movies. But this interview that we're about to toss to with Ron Howard, I mean, I've said this before on the show. We started the show 4+ years ago, and there was never any intention that we would ever get named guests. We just, started as an award show, as we've said a million times. But our first big guest was Alfonso Cuarón in terms of a director.
He was our first guest, wasn't it?
And then Zach Penn, him and Zach Penn were around the same time, right?
Zach Penn was technically first because Zach Penn wasn't really a guest. He was a guest host.
Correct.
And we thought about,
interesting.
And then we very quickly were like, we're not going to get everybody to stick around for an hour and a half. Zach Penn was very gracious enough to give us that amount of time. And I think
unless you're Mike Flanagan or Kevin Smith.
True.
And Zach obviously wrote Ready Player One, and he actually wrote or was part of writing one of my favorite movies, which is Last Action Hero. But in terms of Ron Howard, you know, there are names that have been on this show, obviously the bigger ones from the Tarantinos to the Nolans. And again, that just sounds crazy to even say that, but we've had some massive directors on this show. Ron Howard is a director that, you know, again, I need us to rewind 4 years ago and say, hey, we're going to have Ron Howard on our show. I mean, it just sounds insane. And you know, Sean went down to Savannah to do this interview. Jake and I were not able to get there, and Sean crushed it. And we cannot wait for you to hear this. One of the things that's
I
really
can't
cool,
wait to hear. I have not heard it yet. Like, as of this recording, I haven't. I'm like legit just excited to listen to it. As like people actually forget that a lot of times if one of us can't make it, at least I don't know, but for me, I usually just hear it for the first time when the show is published, like everyone else does. So we kind of in a way sort of become fans of whoever's doing the interview.
We also, like, what's important to note, and it's funny, I feel like I've heard the interview, but I haven't heard it either. And the reason I said that this interview is going to be awesome is because right when Sean was done, so what we do behind the scenes when Sean or somebody is doing an interview alone, we send questions. Jake and I will send questions, or Gabe we'll all have suggestion ideas. So Sean texted us right after it was over with basically the arc of the interview, which you're about to hear. And I'll tell you right now, if you're a Ron Howard fan, this covers his whole career. So you guys are in for a treat. I can confirm it is a fantastic interview.
What if Gabe came back and was like, I'm gonna be honest, guys, it kind of sucks.
No. So a special thank you. This isn't sponsored. I know they sponsored the show last week, but the SCAD Savannah Film Festival did help us secure this interview. This happened while Sean was at the festival over this past weekend, and we would not have been able to get this without them. So a big thank you to them, and a big thank you to Ron Howard for taking time out of his day to sit down with Sean. And so without further ado, here's Ron Howard on Real Blend.
Wow.
First off, I want to start just because we are here in Savannah, and this is such a hotbed for filmmaking. Have you ever had a chance to film here?
I've never filmed in Savannah.
Okay.
I've visited Savannah a number of times, just on personal trips and so forth. And I really didn't understand until very recently how large the program has become at SCAD.
Right.
And I always thought of it more as, design, fashion, fine art and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And but it's really exciting, and you can also just feel the energy here in Savannah.
Yes.
And what the school sort of now means to this city.
I'm curious if there was ever a stage in your career where film festivals were influential in terms of maybe getting your work out there.
No, I've never been really a festival favorite.
Right.
And because I kind of emerged within the mainstream system, so I've don't think I've ever had a film in competition at a festival.
Oh, really? That's so unusual.
I don't believe so. Maybe someday. But
that's a goal for you.
When you screen at Toronto, kind of, everything is in. There's a popularity vote.
Oh, sure.
And
right.
I think I had a movie that did well there once.
I was going to say you've probably had a few movies that were in like Oscar contention.
But I recognize how vitally important and more important than ever festivals are, because in that recent drive to try to cut through the clutter, more than ever, there's a tendency for the buyers. The gatekeepers, the executives who have to make these decisions to play it safe. They don't want to, they know they need to be fresh and they want to be exciting, but when it comes to really pulling the trigger and saying yes to something, they tend to go with what they see is working out there in the marketplace.
Sure.
And by the time something's succeeding in the marketplace, it's probably already getting some of the edges kind of rubbed off of it.
Sure, yeah.
But the festivals are a place where projects can come in and gain profile, and filmmakers and showrunners and documentarians can be noticed, and it's a more pure expression of the way they want to tell a story,
right?
And more importantly, the way they see the world, the way they're dealing with certain themes,
right?
The way they're depicting culture and human relationships, and it's pretty unfiltered. And when one clicks with audiences and the media,
right,
and they say, here's a fresh, exciting voice with a fresh, exciting perspective, that kind of approach to a story becomes a safer bet for those gatekeepers whose careers depend on investing wisely, right?
Right, sure, yeah.
And so that's where I think the festivals are just about the only place for those voices to be seen, and for those ideas and that kind of approach to stories to be validated.
Yeah, it's so true. Last night we did the Weird Al Yankovic biopic, essentially, and the filmmaker afterwards said, I think that was the most honest response that I've gotten, because everything else I've gone to has been like Weird Al fans that came for that show. But this is a mainstream crowd that just loves movies. And so he felt like he got a genuine response to how it plays to a crowd like that.
Oh, well, that's great. I'm eager to see that.
Was 13 Lives similar when you just went through it? And
well, all I got was the very aftermath,
okay,
which was extremely positive. 13 Lives is the highest testing movie I've ever had.
Oh, really?
Even higher than Apollo 13, which was my previous high. And I've had a lot of other movies that, by sort of testing standards were, very, very successul. But there's something about 13 Lives that, is and it's the reason I wanted to do the movie is it's the, that idea of volunteers who don't have to even be there.
Right.
Risking their bodies, risking their psyches, sometimes their careers, just simply to try to do the right thing, crossing these cultural, ideological barriers and just getting things done, ignoring politics and just doing it. It's been gratifying. What's exciting to me is that there's a lot of Thai spoken in the movie, and so therefore here in the U.S. there are a lot of subtitles.
Sure.
Did not hold audiences back from appreciating the movie, no matter where we've tested it.
Okay.
And that's incredible. To me, that's a turning point, and again, a sign that that kind of appreciation for cultural authenticity,
sure,
including hearing the native language just with subtitles,
right,
has kind of moved from festivals kind of into streaming in a big way.
Right.
Although we've had Crouching Tiger and other movies in the past that really worked, but on a broad level, but not very many with the subtitles. And now Squid Game, Narcos, Call Your Agent, whatever, any of those from the streaming world that rely on subtitles that are massive global hits, have trained audiences everywhere,
right,
I think, to actually appreciate that cultural authenticity.
Peaky Blinders, I put the subtitles on.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because I need them.
You're right.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people do. You're not alone.
For sure. The filming conditions for something like 13 Lives, I'm so glad you tied it to Apollo 13, because it just seems like the claustrophobia that's inherent in the storytelling that you're trying to capture there. Are there tricks or tools that you maybe learned on Apollo 13 that still came into play here?
Absolutely. There were a lot of parallels, and it was also an understanding that audiences would really be fascinated by the minutia, the on a really granular level. That people would be curious about things like the gear that's handmade by the divers and what it looks like, and and how various steps were sort of came to be. And the problem solving under duress,
right,
getting yourself in and out of a difficult pinch point in a cave, and and all that. So I had confidence based on my experience on Apollo 13, and then later Rush.
Yeah, true.
That even people who don't necessarily know anything about it could find the procedure and the mechanics of it really fascinating. So in my mind, I thought, well, this is about technology applied to a crisis, and it's also then about sort of mental problem-solving skills applied, and that's where that intersection point. And in our movie we have technology. Some of it's kind of ancient. At some point they're splitting bamboo to try to make a pipe system when they've run out of actual piping, to try to divert water off of the mountainside and try to divert the water away from flooding the caves. And a lot of what the divers do is very mechanically simplistic and basic, but they need to know that it just frickin' works, And so they don't want it to be too fancy. They just want it to be really simple mechanically, and then computers factor in in places as well, and all of that meets then the psyches of these individuals who have chosen to volunteer and put themselves in harm's way, or devote a tremendous amount of time with no guarantees of success. In fact, they all felt that huge disappointment was guaranteed. They really were hoping one or two kids might get out. And all of this was to just see if they could even save anybody. And yet they wound up taking all 13 out.
Well, and this is going to sound like a big question, but what you capture, this story is a miracle, And so, at what point in the process do you feel comfortable that you're capturing the weight of the miracle? Is it on the day? Do you get it in the edit? Like, it's an important thing to convey.
Well, I actually wrote on my script Anatomy of a Miracle.
No kidding.
Because I wanted to take the most granular look at what was achieved and what it took, all the effort, all the risks that were taken to make a miracle even possible. To even take a shot at experiencing a miracle. You still had to do, take all of these steps and take all of these risks. Filmmaking is kind of an exciting and alternately frustrating thing. And there are lots of times where you shoot and you hope you got it. You think maybe you kind of got it. And then you get to the editing room and you find out it's wonderful. It's everything you need. You felt rushed. You felt compromised, and yet somehow you managed to get the moment that you need to convey an idea. That piece of the mosaic really, really works, and it succeeds. And other times you shoot and you get a surge of emotion because you're so satisfied by what it was, and you take it to the editing room and it underperforms. But I've done it enough that more often than not now I'm able to see on the day, we've got what we need. And I'm able to think editorially as we shoot. Which is kind of the way I work. I sort of shoot for the editing room. Not just blanket coverage, but very specifically thinking about how one thing may cut with another, or what are my options? I want to create a set of options here. These two angles could cut together to create this kind of moment, or I could extend it by going to another angle, or that kind of thinking about the sort of the rhythm of things and the juxtaposition of images and ideas. With this one, the cultural specificity was important to me. So I would look at a moment and feel like we got it, but I was constantly looking at our co-producers who were Thai. Or key actors who I began to really, really trust would tell me the truth. Thai people are so polite that they don't want to criticize you. On a cultural level, that's kind of not what they are sort of taught to do and feel comfortable doing. But some of the actors became confident enough in me that they recognized that I wanted a collaboration. So I would often turn and say, how are we doing? How will that work for a Thai audience? Does that feel honest to you? And sometimes the answer was not yet quite.
Wow, that's great.
And
valuable.
And very often, it was that's gonna work. I was so, but the real answer to your question is you don't know until you cut it together and start showing it to audiences.
Right.
And for us, we didn't know what Thai audiences would really think, even though, we'd occasionally shown it to, little clusters of Thai audience members that we could find, whether in London where we were editing or back in the US when we were finishing the film there. But we really didn't know until we did publicity in Thailand.
Okay.
I had to do it remotely. But I'm telling you, it's one of the most gratifying days of publicity that I've ever
that's
had.
awesome. That's great.
Because not only were the journalists positive, but everybody, all of our Thai actors and those co-producers, they were assuring me that this was beyond politeness, and they were getting texts from friends saying, you guys really did it. This really feels right. And man, that was a thrilling day for me.
Made it worth all the work
that
went into it. Not to name drop, but we're lucky enough to have Tom Hanks on the show for the Elvis promotion. And he was talking about these moments that are these happy accidents during filming. And I bring it up because we're right here in Savannah, and he was talking about filming the scenes on the bench for Forrest Gump. And then when he was shooting them, he considered them just interstitials. Like he didn't even really think that Zemeckis was going to use them, kind of thing, because he wasn't sure if anyone was going to buy into this guy with the box of chocolates and kind of thing. And it ended up becoming what it was, right? And I'm just curious if you have an example of that, where you shot some stuff and you were like, I don't really know if we're even gonna, and then it becomes one of the biggest things that you've ever put out there.
Wow. I'm immediately drawing a blank because there are so many.
Okay.
It kind of happens all the time in one way or another. I'll tell you, there's an example in 13 Lives where we, one of the actors who's from the northern region, which is a very different kind of religion. It's still Buddhism, but there's a lot of animism and kind of very traditional, ancient religion and sort of spiritual practices that are a part of it all. And I had seen in some of the news coverage a ceremony that the parents had been engaged in, and I asked Cate about this, and his. I through an interpreter and so forth, I began to understand what it was, and I asked. He's also a stage director, and I asked him if he could actually coordinate with our Thai actors playing the parents, a scene like that.
Okay.
And he did. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't scheduled.
Okay.
They prepared it.
Okay.
And one day, when it looked to me like we were going to end a little bit early, I said to Bill Connor, for the first AD, I think we could shoot that scene. And he said, yeah, I think we could today. Let's do it. Let's go for it. And we shot it very quickly. It was kind of amazing. And, Cate wrote the ceremony and he performed it, and others were playing instruments and so forth. It was beautiful. And yet there was no place to put it in the film.
Okay.
Very frustrating.
Sure.
But one day the editor, James Wilcox, showed me a cut of the first day when they're going to go in and try to rescue the kids. And there's so much tension and anticipation. We actually have a shot of some parents praying.
Okay.
But it's not this ceremony.
Okay.
But he put the audio track from that ceremony over the entire sequence. And it became the soundtrack for the beginning of that sequence. And it gave it such kind of primal power.
Okay.
And the way Cate had performed it was so, honest and emotional that it completely sort of informed the scene and kind of reinvented it.
That's amazing.
In a fantastic way.
That's outstanding. One of my co-hosts, Kevin McCarthy, I really wish he could be here because he has mental health issues. He struggles with them. And he talks about a scene in A Beautiful Mind that he brings up to his therapist all the time, which is Russell Crowe being able to walk past Paul Bettany's character. And that he hopes that one day he can get to that point where he can just walk past the things that are bothering him in his mind. And he wanted me to ask you if that's something you hear often about that film, if that has that kind of impact on the audience. It's
one of the few times that I made a film, and Brian Grazer instigated that project. He found the subject, fascinated by the brain and the way the brain works, and mental illness. And we both wanted to do it to destigmatize mental health. So it needed to be entertaining. We thought it was a great, inspiring story, but we really hoped that underneath it would serve this purpose. And we get feedback to this day, like the feedback you just gave me, it varies, but it boils down to using the sort of the language of cinema to go beyond basic sort of information, and to create this sort of the empathy of understanding and relatability to audiences, to general audiences.
Right.
And I know I've never, ever walked or driven by a person standing on a corner having a conversation with no one.
Right.
And felt the same way about it again, because I now have an understanding of what that individual is going through.
Sure.
And it's it's hell on earth.
To lighten it up a little bit, we're coming up on 30 years since Splash. What does that mean to you to hear that?
That's a U-turn. But that's my career. When I realized my dream was going to come true. I was going to have a bona fide career as a filmmaker, and I was going to have a modicum of control over what it was that I chose to do.
Okay.
The only sort of careerism that came into play in my mind at all was to not be categorized in any one genre, as I'd been categorized as an actor.
Okay.
I'd been sort of typecast as an actor.
Okay.
I understood it, why. But I thought, I love so many different kinds of movies that I'm gonna prove it to myself and to others that I can be strong in multiple genres.
Okay.
And it's the only thing that I struggled to do. I wanted to succeed all along. I didn't want to take, be reckless about the choices that I made.
Sure.
But Beautiful Mind was a huge turning point.
Right. Were you impacted at all then with what happened to George Lucas in a way that he makes American Graffiti, then he goes and makes Star Wars, and then people just think he's going to continue to make Star Wars films?
I was also impacted by what I saw that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were also succeeding at.
Right.
Which is they were making projects in those early days, whether it was American Graffiti and then Star Wars and then Raiders of the Lost Ark that George was very creatively engaged in, but so was Steven.
Sure.
Or E.T., Close Encounters. These movies couldn't really be compared to anything else. No one else was making those movies that way at that time. Right. And I thought, wow, they're entertaining. They're aggressively entertaining. They're there to try to really be crowd pleasers, yet they're not imitating anything of the moment. Maybe they're looking back, right, and sort of modernizing and building upon some kind of familiar cinematic ground, but they're not really doing serials. They're really making very modern, cutting edge movies. Right. They're not really doing 50s B sci-fi. Sure. This is something else, and I thought that that was smart. And so early on, doing things like make a mermaid movie. Yeah. Make a movie about senior citizens who want to live forever. Right. I even Far and Away. I felt like I wanted to make movies that probably no other director would tackle right at this moment. Right.
I know we're going to run out of time, and you have a very busy day, and I thank you so much for coming on. But I want to wrap on this one, and since you're getting this incredible achievement, what do you still love the most about the filmmaking process?
Collaboration. Really? The energy of the collaboration, and the life experiences that just go around a project. It's sort of like an expedition, and I get to be at the center. In fact, I must be at the center of this sort of swirl of creative problem solving, and it's energizing. it's the medium that can't be mastered.
Right.
But I've decided that that's the good news.
Yeah.
And I'll just keep putting my best foot forward. And trying to create work environments where my collaborators really have a chance to excel, to do their very best work. And that continues to be exciting for me, and I'm learning a hell of a lot as I go.
Again, a special thank you to Ron Howard for joining the show, and to the SCAD Savannah Film Festival. They helped us set up that interview, not only booking time with him, but they also had somebody come in, because I was not there, to handle the tech side of it.
Oh,
so
wow.
It sounds great. It's all of them. So it was a big thank you to them. And a big thank you to our guest, as always.
Someone named Babe. They did the audio for that.
Yeah, just me in a wig.
Oh my God, Babe Kovac, like, dude, like you're
Kovac again. You're ruining it.
No, look, one of us has to be Sean on this show right now and mispronounce people's names.
Oh yeah, no joke.
Come on,
yeah,
Jake, got to fill the role.
We'll pick it up.
Jake took that mantle for us today,
Yes.
so keep tuned in.
Let's dive right into the news of James Gunn and Peter Safran being named co-chairmen and CEOs of DC's film, TV, and animation. I just want to get your guys' immediate reactions. This did just drop. I have some more details from their statement. It is a bummer that Sean's not here, because Sean kind of wrote a whole book about DC productions, a decade of DC productions, and is tapped into that. So I'm sure over the coming weeks, he'll have more to say on the show, some of his insight. But Jake, your immediate reaction, because this moments before we hit record, this dropped. So,
well, I mean, based on what I've read, it seems like James Gunn is going to be much more in charge of the creative aspect of what is now being retitled DC Studios, which I think is kind of cool.
Studios,
I think that sounds much cooler. And Safran taking over much more of like a financial, maybe like a CFO kind of role. I'm a big James Gunn fan. I dug his Suicide Squad. I obviously love his Peacemaker, and I loved everything he's done with Marvel, and I loved everything he's done outside of the superhero genre. I think he's got a great vision. I think he's got a great voice. I think he's got a unique voice, and I think he has a love and a passion and a respect for these characters and these worlds equally. I think blind loyalty can get in the way of people sometimes, like pitting DC against Marvel, Marvel against DC. I think as fans, we should want them all to be good. I don't understand this picking sides. And I think he has that really even keeledness between the two, having worked in both. I think he has a great perspective having worked in both. He's sort of seen inside each circus tent. So I think putting him in charge of the creative angle moving forward is a really smart move. It's a great move. He knows what filmmakers need. He knows what actors need. And I think that's going to be really important for him, not just on the projects that he himself is directing or spearheading, but on the projects that he's handing over to other people. And I think it's going to attract a lot of other filmmakers, knowing I can go to the head of the studio on a filmmaker to filmmaker level. Yeah. And he's been in the trenches. He gets what it's like, and he'll know where I'm coming from if I need things from the higher ups. And I think that's going to be very attractive to a lot of filmmakers.
I do want to pick up from that, because one thing, trying to read between the lines of, a well-worded, well-reviewed and edited statement that they had. Sure. They specifically pointed out how excited they are to work with new directors, talented directors, writers, and such. And to me, that sort of shows us that this isn't going to be this. James Gunn is not the new Zack Snyder of whatever DC's going to be. They've sort of more interested in being the MCU, in that having someone who creatively maybe is at the head of it and understanding what needs to happen across the board. But I expect that moving forward, DC projects are going to continue to feel fresh and different in the way that they have more recently with the likes of the Batman versus the Suicide Squad.
Sure.
To me, that was, again, trying to read between the lines. I felt like that was them pointing to, we're not saying James Gunn is the new Zack Snyder and everything is going to have his tone, which is a great tone, but it's very strong. And, that could also become a little bit much, 3 films a year. So I thought that was reassuring. Kevin, what did you think of the news?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because Jake points out the fact that he's worked in both, which is probably the most important thing, because he understands what fans want in both realms, right? And obviously MCU fans and DC fans, there's that whole rivalry of which I wish didn't exist. I mean, there could be two studios.
We say that, but it feels like it's a rivalry that only exists on Twitter. So it's like, how real is it? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how many people are at like MCU screenings with like DC shirts on and shaking their fist at the screen. Like, I think it's more.
I think there is a bit of a rivalry between the two. I think, you know, and you know, not because all creative people want other creative people to do well, but in the same way, you know, like you know. In the same way that,
you mean like studio to studio? Like,
yes.
Like,
yeah.
Well, sure. But I think that's just as a business, that's probably, they're competitive with, you know, non-superhero movies as well in that regard. But sorry,
one of the things I found interesting about this news was, so just backing it up a couple days with Black Adam coming out and Henry Cavill returning as Superman at the end of the film. Spoiler alert, but it's out there everywhere now.
And they kind of released that.
Is that the worst kept secret?
Yeah, jinx. No, it is like the worst kept secret ever. They should have just kneeled, or they should have just like lent into the actual marketing. But anyways, in terms of that news with Cavill coming back, one of the things I found on the internet that I found perplexing was everybody wanted Cavill back as Superman, but now they're angry that Snyder won't be involved, theoretically, or whatever, you know, whatever that news is going to be. So,
it's funny you say that, because a question we can't ask him. A question I want to ask Sean, because I don't know what.
This is what I want to know too.
I don't know what Snyder's relationship is with Safran or anything like that, but I wonder if a creative like James Gunn being at the head of it, if that would make James Gunn more likely to come back.
That's literally what I was about to say. I was like, do you think James, like, because based on what Jake was just saying, when he was talking about like filmmaker focused, understanding what directors need, what people want to see, what actors need, like I could see James Gunn like giving Zack Snyder that arc again, like giving him, and again, I don't know the legal aspects behind the scenes. There's been so much history with Zack Snyder and WB. I have no idea. But with this new news, considering who James Gunn is, and he's somebody obviously who's dealt with controversy himself and things like that, I could just see him being someone that knows the tone and the world that these DC fans want. And with the fact that Cavill's returning, which is probably the most important news that DC's had in a long time, because that, you know, again,
well, you can't be a DC superhero or superhero property without having a Superman. Like that's,
right, but
who is their Batman right now?
Pattinson. No, that's not the DC. No. That's a different universe.
It's not the DC.
The Flash is going to solve all our problems, apparently.
Oh, it's a good. Well,
hey, it could be Michael Keaton.
It legit could be Mike. Did you guys read a quick sidebar that he got paid $2 million for what was essentially like a 30-second cameo in Batgirl?
I love it. That didn't even come out.
Crazy.
Yeah. I say good for Michael Keaton.
You got free lunch too.
That's another thing. I bet you James Gunn gets Batgirl to come out.
Oh, interesting points.
I think James Gunn.
I don't know.
And to Gabe's point,
I think that's the head of. I think that's Warner Brothers Discovery made that decision. So I don't know that they're gonna just. Who knows?
When you bring someone like James Gunn into the mix like this at a level that he's at, essentially a Kevin Feige type,
it's exciting
level, right?
because it seems like anything's possible at this point.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think
that's what we're getting at.
But Gunn is also like Jake was saying, he is a director that loves the movies and knows what we love. There is no way that James Gunn,
and he's a very successful producer as well. What's the like the superhero horror movie that he produced? Brightburn was great.
Which was like an R-rated Superman.
I do want to touch before we get too far away from it. Having said the Snyder stuff, I don't think he's going to come back. I don't think so.
I mean, like, I feel like we're not asking the question, which is like, does Snyder even want to come back? Like, everyone keeps clamoring for it.
I think with Cavill,
hang on.
The Cavill return to me.
Let me finish my point.
Dude, Snyder's going to come back for Man of Steel 2. I going to call that right now.
Let me finish my point, because what I'm getting at is I don't know that Man of Steel 2 is going to be Man of Steel 2. I think that I forget the wording that they used in the post, but they mentioned about Hope returning to the DC, and Hope is a big keyword for anti-Snyder, because Man of Steel is not hopeful Superman. Hopeful Superman is what people have been clamoring for and was the big critique. I don't agree with that critique. I love Man of Steel. Yeah. Beside the point.
It's because you're a man of class and taste.
Oh, no. I would love to see a true sequel to Man of Steel. I love that tone. I would love to see Henry Cavill grow into a hopeful Superman. That's kind of where I always felt like that arc was going.
Yeah.
So maybe that's possible. What I think will happen is that because they talk about Henry Cavill having an idea about what he wants Superman to be and all that. I think they might just make a hard turn. Not that it won't feel like the same Superman, but I think we're going to get a hard turn. We're going to get a fresh, we're going to answer people's call for a hopeful Superman and not the serious, gritty Superman.
I get really nervous whenever we start like doing knee-jerk reactions to what people on the internet say they want. Like I would love to see that, but
I think, again, maybe I'm reading too much between the lines. I think when they say hope is returning to the DCEU,
as long as it's a solo movie, like I'm tired of him being a part of ensembles.
I disagree that his Superman's not hopeful.
No. I disagree as well, but that's what people say.
Sure.
Yes, that's my point.
But I mean, if you're saying hope returns and we feel that way, I would imagine, again, I don't know James Gunn personally, but I would imagine that James Gunn aligns with our feelings on superhero films and the way characters are portrayed. And again, at the end of the day, I mean, this is a guy who's worked in both Marvel and DC, and tonally, they're both very different. I mean, you could argue Marvel is definitely more hopeful. I mean, if you want to put it in those terms, if you want to use that word. But sure. I do feel like the Cavill thing is fascinating because I do think that Gunn would be the person that could get Snyder back.
I agree.
I just don't know. I don't know the legality. I don't know what that relationship is. But as we know in the world of movies, people go in and out of that business. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the history of Tim Burton. Wasn't he fired from Disney years ago and then they brought him back to, I mean, like it happens a lot in the industry. And I just can't imagine James Gunn going, all right, Cavill's back.
It's okay, but
how do you not bring Snyder?
It's not an impossibility. The point, I think the more the point is no one is sure that Snyder's interested. And it seems like they're more than happy to kind of move on from that. And so the toxicity around his fan base and stuff, like I think it's just too easy of a decision to just be like, we have the guy who plays Superman, let's just make something.
Can you really do Man of Steel 2 without Snyder? I don't
know that it's going to be Man of Steel 2 is my point.
Do you think it's going to be like a team up movie?
I think it's too early for we could spend the rest of our show talking about this. This is how little we know.
One of the things that's really important to note, and again, I don't want to stir any controversy, but there were stories about what Cavill said in that video. Like, does it mean he's actually returning for full movies? Does it mean he is back?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
he's going to be the voice of Superman in the animated movies.
No, but I mean, Superman is back.
He's replacing Krasinski in DC's League of Super Pets.
It's truthful. It's just, what is he back as?
We have a lot of show to get through. I will point out, and I'm going to move right through this. I will leave no room for comment. This does mean that once Guardians 3 is out, I mean, I don't assume Marvel's going to hire the CEO of DC Studios to make any more movies. So
I want to see his press tour for Guardians 3.
Yeah,
I think
I want to see his press tour for the holiday special.
You guys don't think he's going to participate?
No, he will, but he's gonna have a hard time not answering DC questions.
Well, it's sort of like remember we got J.J. Abrams for Star Trek 2, but he just been signed on for Star Wars, and it was sort of like, damn it, like he knew that. I was like, dude, like we have to ask about, like we can't not ask.
Well, here's the
and we were there for Paramount, and we were talking about a Disney movie, and I remember asking, I was like, dude, please put some lens flares on the end of your lightsabers, as I'll try.
Marvel's too big, though. Marvel's too big. Like, people will have their DC question, maybe. But like, people are also going to need Marvel content, so I don't think I think Marvel can only win from having him do press. So
in all honesty, what'll probably happen is this will probably help his DC stuff, because if he's just like in DC a positive, if he's in a positive promotional tour for Guardians 3, he goes, hey, wait till you see what I got coming out on the DC side.
I don't know that Marvel will be excited about him hawking his next wares, but my point being, I don't think he's gonna pull. He poured his heart and soul into Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't think he's going to not do press for it because he got a new job. Like, I think
it is weird timing, though.
Personally attached to that movie. But moving on, we're going to get some quick box office reactions before we get into the Quantumania trailer. Black Adam, number one at the box office with 67 million domestic. Ticket to Paradise in second with 16.5. And I will note that this is the first weekend since July that has totaled over $100 million at the box office. Smile was in third, by the way, and it's third week now, I think it is. Third or fourth weekend, it's doing well. Jake, your thoughts on this weekend's box office results?
I thought, well, first of all, Kevin, I think you lost a bet, so I think you owe me something. A drink. We had a Black Adam box office bet between the two of us.
What was the number?
Above, the number was 50 million, above or below.
Yeah, I was wrong on that.
Honestly, I feel like that's a pretty solid number. I mean, it's his best.
What were the highest projections going into the weekend?
All the projections I saw were like 60, 62,
70.
something like that. I feel like 67 is really solid. To me, what's going to be more telling is less weekend one and more like how it plays. It's got some big hurdles ahead of it, namely speaking Wakanda Forever coming up in 2 weeks. So I think it needs to grab as much cash as it can now. What is it, 140, a little over 140 around the world? And I saw its Monday numbers. Right. We're recording this on a Tuesday. I saw its Monday numbers were pretty solid at like a little over 4, almost 5 million. So its domestic totals already in the 70s. I mean, it's as long as it has the legs, then we're good. It's a new character that people don't know very well. It's a situation where I think the Dwayne Johnson is selling it more than the character's name, as opposed to the opposite, where like Doctor Strange sells the movie more than Benedict Cumberbatch. Right. So I feel like Warner Brothers has to be happy with that. The audience score was very positive,
over 90%.
Yeah, which is great. You know what? And I think I think week 2 will be very telling.
Do you think that people are gonna Halloween weekend? People are gonna go see Black Adam, or are they gonna go see Smile again, or the movie coming out this week?
I think it's gonna take a pretty big drop.
I just don't.
Like 50%.
What does it need to reach worldwide for people to go, okay, yeah, that was, what is it, 700?
Well,
I think Sean said 700.
Yeah, because one of the things that people don't understand when they're talking about box office, and this is something that I didn't understand for a long time, was just the budget itself, which is, reportedly around 200 million. That's just the budget.
190, 195.
Yeah.
But
that's
when you go
that's
into
not P&A.
P&A, you're adding, I mean, you could add upwards of 200 million on top of that. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know how much their P&A was, but I would imagine if you're traveling all over the world and doing all those premieres and you're doing all those junkets and those interviews, that all costs a lot of money. All the ads on TV,
it's probably going to clear $500 million to even get into the black.
Right. And right now it's at 142. And honestly, I'm always trying to be a little more optimistic about things, but at 142, 67 million. What's interesting about that is you look at some of the less popular Marvel characters that ended up opening larger than that, like Shang-Chi or Doctor Strange. Like there's, I mean, this is back before, when they were introduced is what I mean. Doctor Strange is obviously a famous, very big character in the MCU now, but but
that's the clout that Marvel has, which is like
Marvel,
we have a new character and the people who go want to go see the new character.
Right, but so Shang-Chi is an interesting one because I was trying to figure out what that opened to here, because that was a no-name. That was a no-name.
I thought an interesting comparison number was versus Aquaman, though, in the sense that like a DC introductory origin story. I have your opening, Kev. Shang-Chi opened to 75.3 domestic,
and Aquaman was 67. Interesting.
And but the thing about Aquaman, though, Aquaman crossed $1 billion because it played incredibly well. Remember that holiday season? I remember Warner Brothers was afraid of Mary Poppins Returns because everyone thought everyone thought Mary Poppins Returns going into that holiday season was going to crush it. And Aquaman ended up being, Mary Poppins Returns kind of underperformed at the box office. Aquaman ended up being the movie that just kind of stuck around.
Never bet against Mr. Worldwide.
Never.
Yeah. And also, if you look at the numbers for Aquaman, this is incredible. 1.1 billion for worldwide. 813 million of that was international. But
I will say before we move out of the box office this week, Kevin, you wanted to mention about Ticket to Paradise. We did interview Caitlin Deaver.
Oh, hey, yeah, we did do that. That's a thing we did. And Sean wasn't there for that. So on you, Sean.
Yeah, you guys, you're even this week. Jake and Kevin did that interview, which dropped on Wednesday, the Wednesday before this. So wherever you're listening to this, that is available. She was delightful.
I thought that was a good interview. It was good.
And if you're a fan of Booksmart, she talks a lot about.
So much of Booksmart's talk
about that. But Kevin, you wanted to mention 16.5 million for Ticket to Paradise counter programming. Helped us over that $100 million hump that it's that we've been lagging on at the box office. What'd you think?
what I find interesting about these numbers, like, you know, the sexier story in terms of like a headline is, you know, the number one movie in you know, 67 million for
Dwayne Johnson's always the sexier story.
Yeah, but you know, but I get it, because like 67 million is a lot more money than 16 million, clearly,
right.
But it's all perspective. And I think the budget reportedly for Ticket to Paradise is 60 million. The movie's already made 97 million worldwide. It was already a hit prior to opening up in the United States. Also, what's fascinating about Ticket to Paradise is it's old school in the sense of it's two massive A-list stars leading a film. We are in a day and age now where we are seeing less of that, less of names opening films rather than like franchises and you know, superhero films. You know, Shang-Chi's a great example. You know, Simu Liu was not a name before that movie came out, but it crushed because the Marvel.
But the thing you have to worry about is they've been names since that era. I get the difference. That. Like, is the entertainment industry creating the next George Clooney and Julia Roberts at the moment?
I mean, it's fascinating. We talk about this a lot on the show. Like, what actors still have the caliber to open films?
You could argue it'll take some time, but you could argue like the Chalamet and Zendaya, maybe, or like that's what
100%.
Maybe that's what that'll become.
Well, you know, Kevin, was there any part of you? I know, like, I understand the narrative of $16 million. It overperformed based on projections. But Sean and I were talking about this last week. Both of us really thought that the movie was going to surprise and hit up into the 20s and maybe even the high. Like, there was based on like Lost City, and it seemed like people kind of, you know, wanting that kind of old school rom-com again and again and again. Lost City had much more of like an action adventure edge to it than Ticket to Paradise is much more of a straight rom-com than we've been talking about. But I really thought that there was, now granted, I also think that Ticket to Paradise is going to have great legs through the holiday season.
I think so too.
I really do think it could be one of those movies we stop talking about and in 6 weeks look up and go, wait, Ticket to Paradise crossed $100 million?
It's going to cross $100 million in the next couple
worldwide
days.
it's doing incredibly well.
I wanted to point out
domestically.
I don't know how many markets. I can't find a way to compare the number of markets, but it did outperform Black Adam internationally. Black Adam had 75.9 international. Ticket to Paradise had 80.5.
Well, but Ticket to Paradise has been open for
like a month.
Yeah, for like a month and a half.
Okay, that's what I say. I don't have that.
Weirdly, like the U.S. is the last country to. Well, you know, that's because we're spoiled brats that expect to get everything first.
Well, it's not that, but generally when that happens, it's like a superhero or some type of big film, like not saying Ticket to Paradise. They'll usually open overseas. But last comment on this, I just think it's interesting because, and I'm not again, and Jake's right about like, you know, Lost City made like 30 million or whatever it was opening weekend, but I don't know. I just found that number. I think a lot of my thought process on this is really kind of yielding with the worldwide total of it, because I'm just thinking about, you know, it's a romantic comedy with George Clooney and Julia Roberts that's going to cost $100 million in 2 days, like 2 days from now. Yeah. And I think that to me is just, it gives me hope that the era of the movie star might not fully be over. I mean, I think, you know, we talk about this a lot about which stars could still open films. And I just found it, I don't know, it's opening against a superhero film. It made significantly less money than that, but the budget was significantly lower. I mean, you're talking about a $60 million film versus a $190+ million film. Right. And I think, to me, I actually like Ticket to Paradise. I thought it was just it took me back to that old school rom-com, and I enjoyed seeing those two on screen together. I just thought those numbers, to me, were more impressive than Black Adam's numbers, because I think Black Adam, being the movie that it is, I think should open bigger than that. But, you know,
Jake, your final thoughts before we move on?
I just wanted to ask something really quick to see if you guys would agree. Is it to a point now where, because we've talked a lot about, you know, the diluting worth of a movie star, is it to a point now where we almost have to start pairing them up like Avengers, like, you know, because I think if like a George Clooney movie came out, people are like, okay, it's a George Clooney movie. A Julia Roberts movie comes out, but then you got both of them together, and then everyone in my circle at work goes, ooh, they're in a movie together. Like, in the same way that you're like, hey, it's not just a Thor movie, Hulk's there too. Like, if you like, maybe like it's more about like seeing actors together that we haven't seen, you know, like if, you know, I think like if someone were to put like Denzel and DiCaprio in a movie together, people would just go, oh my God, like Denzel and DiCaprio in a movie, like that. I feel like that sort of pair up could really sort of bring about.
That's always been a thing, though. That's always been. Sure. I mean, not that you're.
But it could be the saving grace of what Jake's talking about. Like it's interesting because you look at Lost City. So that was
just seeing their names on the poster was like, like two big stars on the poster cool. again. And bring Jake's, back blooper reels.
I agree. I agree with that. And Jake's right, though, because a lot of people said to me, oh, I can't believe they're back in a movie together. Or I want to see Julia Roberts and George Clooney in the movies.
But again, to my point earlier, that shows you that those are people who were engaging with them earlier on in a different era.
Sure, I agree.
They're nostalgically excited to see them together. Where it goes from here will be interesting.
I don't have the exact statistics on this, but I read this when the box office came out, and you'll please clarify if you need to. But one thing we were seeing with the pandemic was that older audiences, were having a slower time getting back to the movies, right? And,
more dangerous,
but look at the older audience. Yeah, right. And the point being is that like young kids were going out to the movies. That's why all the superhero films, Spider-Man and Shang-Chi, were doing so well. But then you had these films that were maybe skewing a little older, like to my parents, who are still not going back to a movie theater. They went and saw Nope with me because I took them to a theater that nobody was at. But in terms of their perspective, they're not ready to go back. They don't feel safe. But if you look at the numbers for Ticket to Paradise, the percentages of older audiences that went was high. It was like higher than we had seen in a while in terms of like a film like that performing with an audience over a certain age. So I think my perspective on that is, maybe we're starting to get more comfortable and get back into, and like, have your parents, I know your parents were, if you don't mind me saying, a little apprehensive to go back. Have they been back yet? Did you tell me that they went back to the movie? Just Nope with me. Okay.
I can't imagine why they went and saw that.
Well, they were visiting me, and I was like, Mom and Dad, I got to go see Nope for the 4th time. Can you guys come with me? And they were like, sure. And it took me like an hour on my mom. Sure. And I was like, Mom, it's okay. I'm gonna choose our seats. No one will be sitting near us. And she had the best time.
You're a good son.
She won't go without me though.
We'll move on. But to give that a number, I'm reading here, and this is from Jim Orr, president of domestic theatrical distribution at Universal Pictures. Who says that almost 2/3 of their audience was over 35. So,
oh wow, my God, am I now almost at the age where they uses the marker for old people?
Yes,
but that's actually
how did that happen?
That's a great statistic, by the way, and that to me is the story. I think that film doing that with that age of an audience is cool.
I think it'll be interesting to see who has the better legs proportionally.
Right, you got to think about it like that.
Yeah. I think that'll be interesting.
Honestly, I think it's going to be Ticket to Paradise.
I think Ticket to Paradise is too, and because Jake brings up Black Panther. I mean, Black Panther comes out in what, 2 weeks? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So,
and then Black Adam becomes a memory.
Yeah.
At that point for superhero fans.
Isn't that crazy how like that's going to just be distant in like 2 weeks?
We will continue the superhero discussion with a quick reaction to the Ant-Man Quantumania trailer, which dropped earlier this week. It feels like a lifetime ago. Ant-Man Quantumania. Jake, you want to take us? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to be honest with you. Look, I have a long history on the show of not being a massive fan of the solo Ant-Man films.
I'm with you on that.
They just don't really move the needle for me. And this movie, at least the look at the trailer that I saw, which I guess is what everybody saw.
I was about to say, I
didn't see anything special compared to everybody else.
You're like,
James Gunn
but it just encompasses everything that's my issue with Marvel right now. Like, it's just clearly, I mean, they're not even trying to hide that they're just in these big blue screen, green screen studios now. It just feels so empty, and I'm just staring at just like a bunch of actors running around in front of a blue. Nothing feels tangible. Nothing feels like real. Everything, and I don't know. It just, based on what the plot is, clearly it has to be CGI because it's just this big, fantastic creation. But it's just sort of like, okay, to me, it just feels like another Marvel thing that reminds me of why I'm detached from the MCU right now. And not to compare one franchise to the other, but if I could just briefly compare it to like why I'm loving Andor so much right now, is that Andor, for those of you who are watching it, is so tangible. Like they shot on location. Like there's a sequence where they needed a dam, so they went out and found a dam, and like everything feels real. Like I know the dimensions and what things feel like, and I know like the complexities of this real world that they're in compared to something like a Boba Fett or an Obi-Wan that just feels like them standing in front of that screen. And to me,
I will say though, that screen's really impressive.
Yeah, but they even had a I can't think of who it was. A cinematographer came out and admitted, like one of the cinematographers they use, like, look, it works for sunsets and sunrises.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for,
I would say that's
ironically,
anything.
full-blown desert planet, which is the only planet that will freaking use these days. So I guess to my point being, like, I just wish, like, I get that things are getting a little bit more wild and crazy, and we're getting a little bit more galactic with the MCU these days, which makes it harder to shoot quote unquote on location or make things tangible. But damn, they just look like computer movies now. They really do. It just makes me feel so emotionally detached from like just because I feel like I know too much about how it works to not see a bunch of actors run, like to the point where like there's a sequence where actors are walking up on rocks, and it's just like, well, clearly those rocks were built on the set, and then the blue screen is behind those rocks, and it's just like I can't unsee that, and so it just looks like I'm watching a very like really expensive, well-made student film.
I'm not interested in defending Marvel. It doesn't need my defense, but I'll say that you probably watched that on your phone or laptop.
A pretty large work computer screen.
Okay, a large work computer screen.
Yes,
I would give it the benefit of the doubt. To me, great CGI looks worse on smaller screens. They really are designed, I think, for the theater. Mm-hmm. And I would also say I think we in particular are just very tuned to that.
Sure.
So it's tough.
Is there any part of you that saw what I saw?
No, I agree. It does. It looks like that. And for me personally, I've gone past the like caring too much about the CGI stuff, like or like bad CGI to a point. Like I'm like, you know what?
But when a film relies so much on it, though, like I'm weirdly enough, I'm much more forgiving. Yeah, sure. We have to see the context
to judge it. Avatar.
Yeah. Everything I've seen about Avatar so far to me looks gorgeous.
No, I'm joking.
What's gonna sell a ticket for me is seeing Jonathan Majors. Though.
Yeah. Did I tell you guys I ran into him in Chicago like 2 nights ago at a restaurant?
I saw it on your Instagram story.
Yeah. I ran into him, and then they dropped the trailer like 2 days later.
Wow.
We walked in, and my whole table went Kang.
That's hilarious.
Which is what I'm sure what he loved.
Yeah, but we get used to it. But Kevin, you are more of an Ant-Man fan from us on the show. What did you think of this trailer?
Well, it's interesting because like I watched it and I really loved it at first, and then I do have some issues and some of the CG I think I agree with Jake on. But in terms of my Ant-Man fandom, the first Ant-Man is one of my favorite MCU films. I think the technology that was used in that movie, I mean, talking about CGI, you know, that was a film that was super innovative. Like they, you know, when Ant-Man would go into a vacuum cleaner, they took these little micro cameras and shoved them into a vacuum cleaner so you could get the perspective of what that would look like for the character to dive into that realm, even the bathtub and things like that. So I always found the first one specifically, while there is CGI clearly, they had a lot of fun. Peyton Reed did with some of the practical devices. I did not love Ant-Man and the Wasp. That it's interesting. I compare the drop of love from 1 to 2 like I do with Guardians from 1 to 2. I loved Guardians 1, but I was not a fan of Guardians 2. But in terms of this trailer, my biggest problem that I have with it is the moment where they all get sucked into the quantum realm and basically it reminded me of the moment in Spider-Man No Way Home when Doctor Strange just does the spell and it just because Peter wants, to fix this thing with the school. And again, I get the bit there. I think it worked in Spider-Man No Way Home. It was a kid, high school kid isn't, that's all he cares about and doesn't understand the ramifications of his actions. And that's kind of the arc of the character. But here, when I saw that again, I was like, all right, that just seems forced. It just seems like again, it's one of those things where this is just the device to get us there. And it didn't seem like it was natural. That being said, I'm excited about a lot of the things, I do think some of the CG in the quantum realm doesn't look good, but that, to Gabe's point, we've also seen trailers come out before the CG's finished.
Sure. We've got a couple of months. You're right about that.
Which I think is also a really weird thing to do, that if you would, and again, I don't know if this one's unfinished. I have no idea, but we've seen it before where like trailers have come out. Sonic was one of the greatest examples ever where that looked horrible and people complained and they fixed it.
Yeah, they just redid it.
But in terms of this, it is the Kang thing that excites me, just like Gabe said. I think what's funny is I was talking to someone about this today. We said this before on the show. The Marvel series, aside from Loki and Moon Knight, maybe like I haven't loved. But Loki was probably the closest thing to an MCU movie that I saw.
Loki
especially
was awesome.
The last episode of that show. But Jonathan Majors, I'm first of all, his work in Defy Bloods was monumental. And he's about to have the biggest year ever next year with Creed 3 and was Creed 3 next year?
I've heard Creed 3 is in March, but I've also heard he has that movie coming out in December, Devotion, that I have heard is, I've not seen it, I've heard it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and honestly, like I'm really big fan of his, and so like it's gotten to a point where like now I'm at like if he's in something, I'm excited to see it, and like you know how that is when an actor gets on the scene and you're like super excited to watch their work. I remember Tom Holland there was a lot of actors who kind of come on the scene and you go, oh, I want to watch this next thing they do. So the end of the trailer was like, I was like, okay, that's cool. Like I mean, the him just saying Ant-Man was cool. I don't think it's the best trailer ever. I do think it looks better than Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think the title is a little convoluted itself. Just Ant-Man and the Wasp : Quantumania. I don't know how that's going to fit on a Chiron. I was thinking like, how's that going to fit on a Chiron? Yeah. But in terms of that, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Jake, in terms of I'm in because I love the first Ant-Man. I'm also in because I just love him and that character. I just think Paul Rudd's Scott Lang is awesome. And just like just him walking around outside of any Ant-Man, just the way he walks.
Honestly, I'd be much more excited about a Scott Lang movie than I would be. And like just like him going to Baskin Robbins and being confused for Spider-Man. Like and that's funny. I could watch 2 hours of that and be perfectly, and it would be a top 15 Marvel movie for me.
Dude, that's literally why one of my top 5 favorite Marvel moments ever is that taco scene in Endgame. I just think that is so funny. I know you don't like that
Marvel
bit.
moments ever?
I mean, top 10. I love that moment. That's
it's
like
Avengers Assemble.
I do love
the Hulk breaks out in Ragnarok.
I do
and
love
the taco scene.
I honestly,
it's such a throwaway like moment of a moment. It's like barely a.
I think it's bigger than that though. I think that scene is so funny, and it's just like him walking up with the tacos and then the thing landing and blowing the lettuce everywhere. Anyways, stupid. But
that's what you get for putting lettuce on your tacos.
Well, lettus is great on taco. I do extra lettuce. Oh, what are you talking about? I do extra lettuce. All right, anyways.
Sir.
What is it? You don't put beans in your chili or something? What's your Texas bullshit?
Because I'm a Texas man.
Yeah. All right.
No beans.
Do you not like beans at all, or just not beans and chili?
I'm not a big beans guy, period. But beans and chili is
they are good for your heart. You know what they do for that. No, but in terms
beans and chili are great.
They are good. All right. So last thing on this, I'm kind of lukewarm, but I'm more excited because of Majors. Absolutely. Actually is the reason. But that scene in the trailer when she hits that button and we're going.
You mentioned.
Just seemed like.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll take a break right there. On the other side, we have This Week in Movies, where we're going to run down the stuff hitting theaters and streaming. A couple of reviews coming your way, so stay tuned. And we are back for This Week in Movies.
I just had a Richard Cheese reminder from.
I know. I want to get I want to make that just an audio cue. I think he listens to the show. I think we could get him to
Barb and Star.
Write that in. Hitting Netflix, All Quiet on the Western Front, new adaptation of that classic novel. Apparently, it is very good.
Yeah, I'm hearing things, like Best Picture nomination worthy.
Yeah, none of us have seen it, but it looks
extremely immersive.
Looks incredible.
I want to see it in a theater. Do we know?
I was just about to say. So I cannot wait to press play on my TV at home.
While you guys go on, I'll check for a theatrical release. But you guys go ahead.
I don't think it's getting anything.
What?
I think we would. I didn't see it, and I think we would have heard it.
No, it is. So again, I can only speak to my area. But if you live in the DMV, it's playing at Cinema Arts and Landmark East Street. I would imagine it's at other theaters. And like Netflix is doing this more often. That's the kind of movie I would imagine
A
you
war
wanna
movie?
see in the
Yeah,
theater.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it is in theaters apparently starting. Oh, it's in theaters now. Okay, so for people
week in
listening to
movies.
this show right now, it's no, meaning that it's already. We're recording this on Tuesday. It's already in
Right.
theaters right this second, and then it goes to Netflix Friday.
Right, which means it probably leaves theaters on Friday.
No, it'll stay. It'll
think
stay
so?
because for example, we're gonna get to Good Nurse in a second here. Good Nurse was already in limited release in
Yes.
theaters. Opens tomorrow or Wednesday on Netflix. So
Right.
you're gonna be seeing this a lot more often. But that movie in particular,
Well, they've
which
been
I
doing
haven't
that.
seen-
They've been doing that for a while. What we want
Right.
is a full release.
Sure, and
Regardless.
Yeah.
Wendell and Wild also hitting Netflix. You said this is Jordan Peele produced this, wrote this.
Yeah, I wanted to just shout this out because
You haven't seen it though, right? We haven't seen it.
No, but one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear when it comes to films is that people think that Tim Burton directed Nightmare Before Christmas, and obviously, it's Henry Selick, and who's a brilliant filmmaker who did Coraline, and now this, and it's written by Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele and Keegan are also voices in the film. I'm so excited about this because I've heard that there's lots of Easter eggs for Nightmare Before Christmas.
That's cool.
I've always wanted to interview Henry Selick and ask him how often he has to correct people. I don't think he probably doesn't do it now, but like when that movie Nightmare Before Christmas came out, it was Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, it was his story and everything.
Was it Tim Burton's or was it Tim Burton Presents? How did
Presents. No, you're right. It was.
Presents,
I'll double check on it, but his name was definitely at the top.
It was exactly. And that's
Right.
why people are confused because it looks like a Tim Burton movie, feels like a Tim
Right.
Burton movie, and
I
they
mean,
put
the
his name on it.
characters. Yeah, but in terms of this movie, yeah, if you're a fan of Nightmare Before Christmas or Coraline, this is the same filmmaker, and with Jordan Peele as a writer on it, he wrote it with Henry Selick. That gives me a lot more
Seems like
excitement.
a good fit for your Halloween weekend, as well as another horror movie going wide. Pray for the Devil. I don't know anything about this, but I'm very curious
It looks scary.
if this is going to continue the sort of horror movies crushing at the box office that's been happening since the summer.
So
with like Black Phone, I think, as far as. Well, no, Scream in January all year.
Scream.
yeah,
All year
you bring
horror's
up
been crushing.
a good point. Like we'll see. Like you guys know how this works. We'll see a movie release weekend with a ton of films, and then the number one will be the movie that no one's ever heard of, like the random
Right.
horror film. And I think here's why I think Pray for the Devil could be big.
It's had like some decent marketing. Like I have seen
Huge.
it. It's not
Yeah.
completely, and it's a wide release, but it's
Well,
not
also,
one
it
where
pl-
like there seems like there's a ton of buildup.
It played before Smile though, so remember Smile's
Exactly.
at 100 million,
Exactly.
and you're talking about all those. Again, I saw it on like a Wednesday afternoon, like at 1:45, and it was mostly high school kids that were in the audience.
Yeah.
Kids love to be scared, especially in this time of year and Halloween. I could see anybody, and especially I'm assuming the movie's rated R because it looks pretty brutal. The trailer is actually terrifying. And I remember sitting in the theater watching it going, I've never heard of this movie, but that looks legit scary. So in all honesty, could that end up like
PG-13.
creeping up? Oh, it's okay. Could
So
it
for
be number
me,
two
this is
weekend? Or
for me,
one?
this is I think this is the release that I have my eye on. That's
Yeah.
gonna pull Black Adam to like a 70 or
think you're
more
right.
percent drop. It's gonna
Also,
be,
the PG-13, that I'm glad you brought that up, Jake. That changes everything because, I mean, in terms of Smile, that still crushed with younger audiences, and it was R. Now that you have the ability to have,
and it's Halloween weekend. Like I don't think
Right.
we can't even sell that. Like there's people who want to go out and do things with friends.
Well,
And
that's
there's
what I'm
a
talking
new
about.
scary movie. Like it just seems like a perfect date for them to drop.
Yeah, think about if you're 15 years old, right? And it's a Saturday night. You and your buddies, you guys want to go out and see a movie. It's PG-13. It's a movie you can go see. It's like, and half the time those kids aren't even watching these movies. They're just like joking around with their friends when they're watching them, but they're still buying that ticket and they're still sitting in that theater and they're still, giving the movie money. That sounds like a perfect storm of an upset in terms
Keep
of
our
box
eye on
office.
it.
That could, I think Gabe's onto something with the
You
horror
mentioned
trend.
something that I just want to interject with really quickly to tell you guys, because I did something that I've never done before in my entire life this past weekend. I walked out of a movie.
Ooh.
And
do you want to say what?
You just made a joke about like kids showing up and joking and talking. I walked out of Smile because 30 minutes into it, like I couldn't even hear like half the audience was like cracking jokes and laughing. The guy behind me wanted to impress everyone by showing that he could predict what was going to happen 10 seconds ahead. And And here's the thing, it was a Saturday, like early screening on week 3. So I really thought like, oh, it'll be fine. Like it's not going to be, and I was with a couple of friends and I'd mentioned to the friend next to me, like, I gotta be honest, like I was getting upset because I was really excited for this movie and I recognized that it was good, but it was pissing me off what was happening in the theater. So I was like, this is unfairly going to skew my perception of this movie. And the person next to me was like, hey, like everyone else down the row, like is getting really annoyed too. Unless, I mean, us old 35-year-olds.
Jake,
I'm surprised no one came in and.
Well, we went to go like,
situation.
and I've never gone to like customer service at a theater and be like, look, like I even like led with like, I've literally never done this. I'm not this person, but I can't stay in there and keep watching that movie because they're ruining the movie. And at this point, like if they try, like it took me like 10 minutes to get to customer service. I've missed a chunk of the movie. Like I didn't want to try to go back in and keep watching. So we got a refund and left, but I've never done that before in my entire life.
Wait, I got to mention this because this is actually funny that happened to you, and I know we got to move on.
We do have to move on.
When I went and saw Smile, this happened to me. There were 2 groups to the right and left of me behind me that were screaming, laughing. So, Jake, you actually would have been really happy about this. There was a guy in the bottom left corner who was seeing the movie by himself, must have been in his 40s. He was so angry that they were talking that he got up out of his chair and then sat down between the 2 groups of people that were talking and literally told them to shut up, or that he was going to, I don't know what he said he was going to do. I didn't hear the what I'm going to do. Those kids did not say a word for the next hour. And it was genuinely, and again, I felt bad because I was one of those kids when I was a kid and joking around in theaters. That guy... But I didn't want to turn around and be like, guys, be quiet. I'm trying to be focused. Because Jake, like, like in the beginning of the film, when we're in the middle of like a serious scene, kids are cracking jokes and laughing. And this guy was like, got up and did it for me. And I was like, thank God. Because like, he literally, like, they didn't say a word for the next hour. It was like, I was like, thank you, sir. I didn't want to be a jerk. You know what I mean? But
couple quick ones. Tar is opening wide. If you want to hear these guys' thoughts, when it first went limited a couple weeks ago, we gave our reviews. That is our episode with Jamie Lee Curtis. If you find that episode,
good episode.
If you want to hear their reviews, it's a part of the This Week in Movies section. There are timestamps so you can find it quickly. I want to keep this one short because I want you guys to talk about Till. Jake, can I just get your surface level reaction to The Good Nurse and your score, which is coming to Netflix?
I really liked this film. I'd give it probably a 4 out of 5. I mean, it is. I feel like you don't truly understand the scope of how disturbing this story is until it's over and you're able to look back, almost take a step back and realize what you just watched happen. For people who are unfamiliar, it is Jessica Chastain plays an overnight nurse. She's dealing with a lot of financial issues and she's got 2 young kids. And this young guy played by Eddie Redmayne starts working the night shift with her as a nurse. They kind of develop a friendship. But over this time, people start coding. People start dying on their floor. And she's not quite sure why. And then brings in this second plot line with these detectives who are trying to figure out what's going on with this patient that died. But the hospital is being very vague and not letting them do their job and really kind of protecting the Eddie Redmayne character, which really makes no sense. And then it ends up being, it's not a spoiler because it's the point of the movie and it's in the trailer, that Eddie Redmayne is killing their patients. And this guy, Charles Cullen, is suspected of, I think he was convicted of around 20 deaths. And that's just what they were able to pin on him. They suspect that number may be upwards of 400, which if true would make him the most prolific serial killer in American history. And it's just a phenomenal film that for me was interesting because I didn't realize how terrifying it was until the movie was over. And then I realized, I just watched a story about a serial killer without really understanding how much of a serial killer story I was watching. And Eddie Redmayne is phenomenal. Like I don't know if he's being discussed in the supporting actor conversation. I thought he was great. I was captivated the entire time.
Yeah, Redmayne's performance.
Yeah, I'd give it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, Redmayne's performance is terrifying. It's like it's also a lot to do with the haircut. He looks it's such a different character for him. And like I'm glad he took this swing because he needed to branch out a bit. I mean, he's obviously Danish Girl. He's done some great different characters over the years, but there was something about this character that I just didn't see him. And I thought that, and Jake's right though. And the reason why you don't realize you're watching a movie on that scale of serial killer is because it's primarily focused on the final hospital, right, Jake, that he was working at when he got essentially caught. So what's crazy about the film is that he was at multiple hospitals along the way, and it seemed like no one was checking when he was getting hot.
Well, not just that, they were protecting him because they did not want to be held liable. So they were basically
let's leave some details for the audience to find out.
So the last shot.
No, but
I know it's a true story, but it's still a piece of entertainment for folks.
Well, in all, it's interesting because. But the reason why I brought that up is because Jake's right, though, because you're watching the film from the perspective of this final hospital.
Sure.
It is staggering and jaw-dropping when they tell you these numbers at the end at the film, because you don't really get that scope and scale throughout it, which is maybe an interesting thing to criticize in terms of like whether or not they did a good enough job kind of like giving the scope of this, except for the end when they tell you the numbers. In terms of performances,
sounds like it was effective either way. Yeah,
it was. Well, it's so effective that your jaw hits the floor when you see the end of the film.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Eddie's great. Chastain's great. It's a true story. I do feel that I agree with the 4 out of 5. It's a really solid film. I want to shout out the filmmaker, by the way. I'm blanking on the director's name. Tobias.
Tobias.
The reason I want to mention him is because there's a really cool shot in the beginning. So I'm in the middle of watching a lot of older films right now, and I'm on a Paul Newman kick. So I just finished The Hustler and Color of Money and Cool Hand Luke. But one of the films that I want to revisit of his is called The Verdict, Sidney Lumet. And there's a scene in The Verdict where a camera is zooming in on a character while there's a pivotal moment happening with Paul Newman. So in this film, if you're a nerd about shots and kind of homages to classics, there's a shot of Eddie at the beginning when he's looking in on a patient as a patient is dying in the hospital, which that scene has different meaning later on as the film kind of progresses. And it's literally a Sidney Lumet homage, the same shot, zooming in, long oneer, really cool stuff. So the filmmaker who made this movie is clearly a great film fan and was paying homage to arguably one of the greatest directors of all time, Sidney Lumet. So if you're into that stuff, keep an eye out for it. It's a cool shot. But yeah, I thought it was pretty solid. Eddie to me was the standout. I was shocked how he was terrifying and like cold and subtle and just, it was a very, very strange character.
Jake, how is Till?
Till is, it's anyone who is familiar with the story of Emmett Till knows going in that this is going to be a very difficult story to endure as a movie fan. Here's what I liked most about Till is that it focused less, in my opinion, I'm curious as to what Kevin thinks, focused less on the tragedy and the outright torture of this young man who went to see family in Mississippi and was tortured and lynched by a group of people in Mississippi. It focuses on how his mother took that tragedy and it became such a watershed moment in the civil rights movement. And look, no one ever wants there to be a tragedy in the first place. You don't want there to have to be a tragedy to even need a moment like that. But the strength that it must have taken for her as a mother, her as a black woman at that time in America, to overcome what she did personally, what she had to overcome as a person, and work to make sure that doesn't happen to someone else. I really appreciated that was the focus of the movie. I was not interested in seeing a torture sequence of a young boy, and I'm glad that they did not really show that outright. I thought it's done, and it's weird to say that a moment like that is done well. That sounds weird to say, but I think it's handled.
Is tasteful the word?
Yes, tasteful. That's a better way of it. It's not
handled
gratuitous.
The scene well. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I really like that I walked in. I'm going to be honest with you. I had to see the film because I was doing the junket. I walked in to that movie kind of dreading it in a way, like, oh, I really don't want to, because I mean, no one wants to see, you know, and that's a story that is particularly personal for a lot of people here in Chicago. But I walked out feeling like, wow, like, you know, like think about what that woman did and how she took the worst possible thing that could happen to a human with their child dying, and the child dying in a painful, torturous way. And she literally changed the lives of generations. There are still lives that are being changed today because she was able to pick herself up and rise above. And I loved that was the idea behind the movie, and that was the heart of the movie. And because of that, I really, really, really liked this movie.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I want to shout out Daniel Deadweiler, who plays Emmett Till's mother.
Oscar worthy.
And this performance.
Okay, I was gonna ask if this was up there.
But you get more people got to see it. With a $3,000 per screen average this past weekend, it's going to get lost in the shuffle of the indie awards dramas if it doesn't start picking up steam. It's got to. Sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I just, her performance to me, I'm trying to think of a better performance I've seen this year. I mean, next to Cate Blanchett, I mean, I think what she did in this performance, there are scenes, and I got to give the filmmakers credit on this film as well, because it's shot incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
And like, to a point where you are leaning in on shots, and it's handled with grace, and realism, and it's raw, it's vulnerable. There are moments in this film that are so shocking emotionally, but they are handled in a way, like Jake is saying, where you feel hopeful for the future, right? In a sense of, like Jake was saying, like you're dealing with the worst imaginable tragedy that the mother could go through, right? In that sense. And what she's able to do to turn that around and go, all right, I'm going to make sure the world knows what happened to my son. And there are characters in the film that are literally saying to her, what you did changed my life. She was literally risking her life to make sure that her son, that his death was meaningful to future generations, and it would change elements of the civil rights and everything. It was so unbelievably powerful. Now, I want to bring her up particularly because there's a scene in the film, it's in the trailer, it's not a spoiler, where she's on the stand testifying at the end of the film. And the director uses a oneer in this shot, and it's just her testifying. And she has this line where she says, it's hard to describe what a mother knows. And I thought about my mom so much in that moment, because for people who haven't seen the movie yet, and for people who don't know the story, once Emmett's body was brought back to Chicago, you know, in the movie itself, she has to feel the body to, you know, confirm it's her son, because he was so, you know, brutalized. And so the point of that scene really comes down to, she knew her son so well that she knew him based on the touch. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to explain motherhood and the connection you have to your child. Right. And I just found that so powerful. And, you know, the idea of her putting those photos of her son on the cover of the magazine, it's just one of the most selfless, but also important moments in history that I was not fully aware of. I knew the story of Emmett Till. I just did not know much about the mother's story in the path. Yeah. Obviously, it's a historical element, but I think over the years, it's funny that Jake brings up the point about going into the movie and dreading aspects because it's such a tough story. And that is not a wrong way to look at it. I mean, like, you know, on a Saturday night, if you're going to want to go see a movie, Till is a heavy subject matter. But weirdly, as Jake was saying as well, you walk out feeling incredibly hopeful. It's actually one of the most powerful representations of a mother that I've ever seen on screen. I have never seen, in my opinion, a film really capture, to the point this film did, it made me appreciate my mom in such a bigger way than, and I'm not saying obviously I appreciated my mom, I love my mom more than anything, but to watch that character do what she did and to watch her perform it the way she did, and because she's a mother in real life. I want to point out her eyes. When you're watching this film, pay attention to her eyes. They are such a character piece and such an important pivotal aspect to you watching the film. There's even the blinking. I know it sounds strange, but watch her in the oneer in the testifying scene and the way she operates, her facial expressions in her eyes. I thought Whoopi Goldberg was great, but I just found this film, to Jake's point, to be so much more hopeful and positive in a way of leaving a theater going, wow, I am so honored that person existed and she did what she did. And now I'm honored to know the story. That's why I love movies. Like, I know the Emmett Till story. I did not know the depth of this. And I was like,
that a lot. Yeah.
I was thankful. I was like, thank you for telling the story. Thank you for letting me meet his mother and letting me understand her path and what she did and the risks she took. I was so moved by it. I
think that's the best takeaway. I have not seen it, and for me, similarly, I was like curious if it had good. I was waiting to see if it had good reviews, or if it was gonna be, you know, sort of like the awards type performance before I committed to seeing it, because the same thing. I was like, I just don't know that I want to sit through.
Yeah.
Which
I think is going to be a lot of people's reaction.
But now that I know that it sort of is, it's more uplifting than that. I'm more interested to see it than ever.
And that word is interesting to use because it is such a harsh story. But Daniel
I think
Deadwyler,
inspiring maybe is a better word for it. Again, I haven't seen it, but it sounds like to you guys it's an inspiring story.
Because honestly, like, it's called Till, but I would argue it's Till in reference to Emmett's mother.
100%.
I mean, I don't think it has to be one or the other. It's
100% Mamie's story. I mean, like, and obviously the Mamie story is tied to Emmett, of course. But
I don't think we need to separate them. Yeah,
I think it's really about the journey and that whole storyline is absolutely incredible. And I really think Danielle Deadwyler is going to be nominated. And I think she deserves the nomination. I would give her the win.
It's honestly, actress is so stacked right now. You've got her, you've got Cate Blanchett, who we're about to talk about in a second, and Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Like, my God, actress is stacked this year.
Well, the Blenders have some homework. Go check out Till this weekend, opening wide, and that'll bring us to our blend game for this week, which is Cate Blanchett. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
I feel like my answer is generic. Does your answer feel generic?
I don't know. I don't think we have the same. I don't think any of us have the same one, probably.
All right, we're in like a standoff.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah.
Like a standoff. Jake, what's your pick?
I'm going with Cate Blanchett as Daisy in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Nice.
I love that character. I love the only reason that movie works is because of Benjamin's love of Daisy and that love that transpired decades, that love that transpired a lifetime. And what Cate Blanchett does with the character Daisy, I mean, she's got to play Daisy over the course of an entire life. I mean, think about how much a person changes in that time. And she does so believably. Every time Benjamin meets up with Daisy at a different point in her life, Cate Blanchett feels completely different. She feels like Daisy at a different point. And not just that, but Daisy's relationship with Benjamin has to change because they really are only the same age at one point in their lives. The way they express it is we're meeting in the middle because he's going one way and she's going the other. So not only does she have to perform the character differently, she has to perform opposite Brad Pitt differently. I just think she had a lot of challenges as an actor thrown at her with this role, even though she plays kind of the quote unquote love interest in the movie. I think it's a much more challenging role than people gave her credit for. I think that she and Brad Pitt had incredible chemistry in that film, particularly when they were quote unquote meeting in the middle. I adore that movie. I feel like that's one of like Fincher's like lesser appreciated films. For sure. I think it's a gorgeous film. Eric Roth's screenplay, the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. And I think, but again, it only works. I mean, it's easy to put all the credit onto Brad and to Fincher, but that movie, I mean, Daisy is the heart of that movie. And it only works if Cate Blanchett, or the actor, whoever is the actor pulling off Daisy, in this case, Cate Blanchett, it only works if Daisy works. So that's why I chose Benjamin Button.
I think that's a great pick. Kevin, if your pick for...
It's interesting. Like Benjamin Button was in my head, but I'm going to go, this is going to be random. I'm going to go Nightmare Alley.
I was just thinking of that. She is great.
Honestly,
in
I
that.
thot Gabe was going to go Nightmare Alley. That's interesting.
No, remember, I think mine's kind of generic, but I just...
Her
that's what I think of.
performance in Nightmare Alley is probably my, I'm picking it. It's my favorite one because first of all, I love Nightmare Alley. I mean, I would love is probably a strong word. I really like Nightmare Alley.
It's a great movie. Underappreciated. I know I've said really that since it was released, but underappreciated. But
her character is so pivotal to the arc and so pivotal to what Bradley Cooper's dealing with. And just this every time. And this is why I chose this, because, you know, when you watch a film and there's a character that shows up that you just want to, you know, you want to see the character choose scenery, right? And like when they're not there, you're thinking about them and going, oh, I hope they come back. And every single time Bradley Cooper or we'd have a scene where she would show up, like I would almost like get up in my seat. I'm like, yes, I can't wait to see what she's going to do here, because the character was just so wild and so interesting and mysterious. And it was almost like a shock, because I don't think I was expecting like a phenomenal character just to show up, because she shows up a little bit into the film, right? It's almost like Gabe's in it, like not halfway through, but like we have the whole beginning section.
What, it takes 7 or 8 hours for her to show up?
It takes a while because it's a bit of an odyssey, that story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and Gabe and I both like that film. So and so for me, it's weird because her career has been so interesting. You know, you could obviously go with The Aviator. You could obviously, I mean, Benjamin Button, I think is a wonderful choice. But I was just thinking about her as an actor. I mean, Tar is phenomenal.
I thought about Tar.
Tar was also one I was kind of wrestling with, because that is such a transformative performance.
And that's
also
her.
A leading role.
I would say that is her movie.
And what's interesting is Jake and I both picked supporting roles for her, and I think that there's a thing that needs to be noted in that is like her performance as a supporting actor is almost more, in my opinion, more impressive than leads in the films that she's in. And like, for a movie like Nightmare Alley, which has an insane cast, I mean, but also it's just it's a cinematography driven film, score. It's a lot of practical effects and sets. And then you have this monstrous performance, I think, from Cate Blanchett, which just stood out beyond everyone in that film. Willem Dafoe and Toni Collette, right? Am I right on that? And Bradley Cooper. And I just, to me, that's the one, like right when you mentioned we were doing Cate Blanchett, I was like, that's kind of the one that I went to weirdly. Yeah. I don't know why. It's random, and it's also I'm probably overlooking a zillion of her other performances, like Elizabeth and stuff.
She doesn't really put in like a boring performance. You know what I mean? Like she, like whatever character you give her, she always gives it layers, gives it something exciting. So she's hard to pick. Mine, I struggle with as well. There's definitely some holes in her filmography for me. I'm sure there's some here or there that like I haven't seen or need to catch up on.
Sure.
One that came to mind, I'd want to rewatch it because I don't even remember how much she's in it. But her in The Talented Mr. Ripley, I think is fantastic. I love that character. And that's one of those characters that I feel like you can see Cate Blanchett play that character in so many other roles, that kind of like uppity, high class sort of character. She's brilliant in it. What I went with, which I said feels kind of generic, but it's important to me, and I think it's incredibly powerful, is her role as Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings.
Sure.
I would point
Are you saying like in terms of like taking it as like the trilogy?
Well, so we do the performance. I don't know that I would pick a specific movie.
I think it's fair to just say Lord of the Rings.
Her is. I think when it comes to actors and their performances, if it's a character, I think it's safe to just pick that character. For me, I point to the fact that she opens the movie. She is like her ability and just the voiceover to make us feel like we're in this completely different plane of existence.
Particularly because those normally, I hate voiceovers off the top of a movie, but that one works. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like she makes something so great that is a very specific thing I hate in movies. Yeah. But
it's a mixture of her voice and the score, the way that they interplay. Just feels like this tale is unwinding before you. I think that she's unique in that she can give that very soft VO, but she could also be that really kind of like what an elf needs to be. This elf needs to be this sort of
she explodes,
otherworldly beauty and all of that, but then also terrifying. And she's able to do that. And she's been commanding as a performer, I think, early on. Like Elizabeth was in their first 5 years that she sort of she's been a leading woman for a long time and capable of that. And Lord of the Rings was not that far. I don't think she'd only been acting professionally, for a decade or so. So I think it's a unique role, similar to what we talk about Gandalf and how that sort of gave us the that's the blueprint for what a wizard is in a magical kind of world. I think Galadriel is the blueprint for what the sort of high elf in the magical world is, and it's because of her mainly, I think.
And Rings of Power is kind of giving a little bit more layering and depth to her performance now that we're learning a little bit more about who she was.
Yeah, and even in that they give they open with the VO, which I loved. So like I said, maybe that's kind of generic, but I love that performance.
I think it's a great pick.
I legit
I like what you said about the
pause.
juxtaposition between the calm and because I think Liv Tyler had that as well. I thought in Lord of the Rings, like there was I had that right, Liv Tyler, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was this and Gabe, you kind of hit it on the head. It's there was this beautiful sweetness to the character, but there was always this underlying aspect that she could mess you up. And I think to me that's even harder to play because you're basically playing it subtly, but you also have to understand and give the audience the idea that you are powerful.
Right.
But at the same time with grace in a very interesting way, because that character was so beautiful and just in the way she moved and the way she, had her presence was. But she was a really that character could mess people up, man. She was great in that role.
Beautiful. I am going to place a bet that Sean did send in his pick. As I mentioned at the top of the show, he's in a secret destination that we can't reveal or why.
I know what it is.
But I don't know if he has time because he's very busy this week. Hopefully, I'm about to throw it to Sean's pick.
What is going on, guys? It's Sean, and I'm coming to you from a top secret location this week. I was able to visit the set of... I actually can't tell you what set I was able to go visit. Hopefully sometime soon I'll be able to share that, although it might not be till next year. There's your hint. We are doing hashtag Cate Blanchett blend. The boys gave their picks, and I am going to go with... This was hard because she's so good in a lot of movies, but doesn't get the starring roles that she probably deserves because she's as outstanding as she is. And I know everybody's sort of talking about Tar and how this is a leading role for her and something that's super impressive. And so for that reason, because she's normally part of some great ensembles, which is why I might have gone with something like Talented Mr. Ripley. Or even I was going to choose Benjamin Button because I love her chemistry with Brad Pitt. But I have to go with Blue Jasmine. And I'm not a huge Woody Allen fan, even outside of all the controversial reasons to not like Woody Allen. It's just his films are really hit and miss for me. When he's great, like in movies like Match Point, I think he's phenomenal. Obviously Manhattan and some of his earlier classics. Blue Jasmine, I can't quite figure out if it's his script is incredibly good and then Cate Blanchett just ripped into it, or if Cate Blanchett took a decent script and elevated it to God tier. But she is outstanding in this very difficult part. And, it's the type of role that Woody Allen tends to write every once in a while, which is someone who's at an emotional crossroads. And in this case, Cate Blanchett is playing Jasmine, the main character, and she's a New York socialite who heads out to San Francisco to sort of lean on her sister for emotional support for the different problems that she's going through. But there are so many layers to this character that Cate Blanchett just beautifully peels away as the movie keeps going. I remember being a very lean sort of 97-minute movie and Blanchett just bringing everything up to a crescendo and just hammering home the emotional impact of this movie. If you're not a huge Woody Allen fan, and I can understand that, give this one a try at the very least, because it's a perfect marriage of script and performance. It's easily one of Cate Blanchett's best performances, greatest roles, and it's tough to say that I enjoyed it that much, because it's a difficult story, and what she's going through. And I'm not saying that it's like heavy drama, but like the stuff that she's going through in particular, and it's played for laughs in some instances, and sometimes Cate Blanchett just makes uncomfortable drama into something that she breaks the tension with her performance, and that happens a number of times in Blue Jasmine. She's riveting. She's the center of attention in every single scene of this film. And it's, like I said, one of her greatest performances. I'm pretty sure she got nominated for an Oscar for it. I didn't look up beforehand whether this was the film that got her nominated. I believe she got nominated for Carol, too. Gabe, knock this all off if all of this is inaccurate. I don't want the fans listening to the show to know how little I know about film. But for my pick, I'm going with Blue Jasmine, which is, without a doubt, Cate Blanchett's strongest performance in a Woody Allen film that I can highly recommend. And so you guys go check it out immediately. Again, I'll be back with the boys very, very soon once I'm able to return from my top secret location on a set that I can't talk to you guys about. Hope it's a good show this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you back on the show very, very soon.
For next week, we want to talk about commanding, powerful performances. I got us back-to-back, I think, picks that you guys are going to be like, we didn't play this? How have we not played this? Next week, write in using hashtag Anthony Hopkins blend and let us know your favorite performance from the
we're all going to have the same.
Okay, I'm going to say, can this be one
we take
where,
out silence?
sometimes, can we take silence out?
Yeah, we have to.
I feel like it would be, you can't pick silence anyway, because it's just iconic, but
I would honestly, if we don't
so
take it out, that's what I'm picking.
It'd be my pick,
100%.
too.
We'll take it out.
That's like one of my favorite performances of all time.
All right,
yeah.
we'll take out. I mean,
obviously, we'll honor it. We'll mention it, but that's
to me,
harder.
This just got infinitely more interesting now that Silence of the Lambs is out.
We'll take out
it's just silence. It's easy. Yeah.
We'll take out Silence of the Lambs, but write in
using hashtag. What am I going to pick?
Using the hashtag Anthony Hopkins blend, or
I have mine.
Send us an email, realblend@cinemablend.com.
Kevin's going Thor Ragnarok.
Mine's a one-word title, if anyone wants to figure it out.
All right, no more hits.
Hard to say.
That's our show this week. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for participating. Reminder, if you're listening to this early enough, on Friday, we are doing a giveaway on Twitter. Go check the Real Blend account. It'll be the pinned tweet. If it's still the pinned tweet, you can still submit. When I pick the winners, I'll remove it from the pinned tweet, so that's how you'll know. Head there. You just got to be registered in the U.S. with Movies Anywhere, 13 or older. 5 codes for Barbarian. Have fun with it. The premium episode, which is dropping on Monday, is going to be a mailbag. It's the end of the month already. We're heading into November soon. And so we have a mailbag answering your questions.
Oh, I love mailbag. Check
the description below for more information on how to sign up for Real Blend Premium. But until next time, you can find us on socials at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovach, and
he doesn't get a plug. He doesn't get a plug.
Hey, he did the interview. Ron Howard.
Damn it.
At Hockey Pads.
Damn it.
At Real Blend. But until next time,
Fablemans, please, for the love of God, Fablemans.
We need something for James Gunn now. We need a James Gunn ending.
Yeah.